Hello and welcome back. I'm doing a series of tutorials on left-handed basics of crocheting. Now, last time I went over the chain, and that's what I've got here. I did a chain of 10 stitches. This time I'm going to show you how to work into that chain with the single crochet stitch. You can see from the chain that we made last time, if you look at it this way, there are a series of little V shapes, and if you turn it, it looks completely different. Sometimes a pattern calls for being worked into a different way, but for most patterns that I've ever worked with, you're just going to work in from this direction, this top loop. A lot of the time, they'll say a number of chains to start with, and then you work into it with whatever kind of stitch it is. But you'll want to keep in mind that before you can work into this chain stitch, you're going to want to do an extra chain and then skip that chain and work back into this first one that you need to work into. Because if you just try to work into the one right next to your hook, go in there, wrap it around, pull through, you've kind of not gotten anywhere except double wrapping your hook. It's not gonna make a very good stitch that way. So instead of doing that, you want to start by doing one extra chain and then skipping that one that you just did and putting your hook into the top loop of the next stitch. And then you're going to wrap that around and pull your working yarn out through the loop you just went into. And that's kind of like how you started the chain, except now you have two loops on your hook. So you're going to wrap your working yarn around again and pull it through both of those loops. And that is your first single crochet stitch. We're going to do that in all 10 stitches across. And I'm going to go slowly so you can follow along if you want to. We're going to go in through the top loop, wrap around, pull out through the top loop. Now you've got two, wrap around, and pull it through both. Go in the top, wrap around, make sure your hook is facing toward you so that you can pull it out. And then you have two, wrap around, and pull through both. In the spirit of keeping your hook facing toward yourself, there is one other thing I wanted to mention. I hold my hook this way with my thumb on the thumb rest like this, but some people prefer to hold it like a fork or a spoon, like this, and they find that they can maneuver it better. I find it harder to keep my yarn in place when I do it that way, but if you find it more natural to do it this way, go for it. Either way, you're gonna do the exact same things. It just varies how you feel comfortable. We're gonna go in through the top, wrap around, come out through, wrap around, and pull through both loops. I'm going to switch back to the other method because that's what I've been practicing. in through the top loop, wrap around, out, wrap around, and pull through. In. I'm kind of wrapping it as I'm going in. That's kind of just because I've had a lot of practice doing it that way. You can wrap it separately or whichever way works better for you. Making sure the tail does not get wrapped up into it. Now here I've got my yarn splitting a little bit. You want to be careful not to go through the middle of it if possible. It doesn't look as nice, and if you have to unravel, it'll tend to get knotted and stuck if that happens. And I'm not saying you will have to undo it, but even after all the practice I've had, I end up having to unravel my projects a lot when I first start a new project, because if it doesn't look the way I want it to, I don't want to continue it. When I put in as much work into crocheting as it takes to make a whole project, you definitely want it to turn out nice if you can help it. I also do it for fun though, so it's not a chore to undo it and restart. So that's the first row of single crochet done into a chain. I'm going to show you the next row also because it's a little bit different working a row into a row that's already been done, and I will show you why. We're going to turn it going the other direction, and then you can see that if we look from the top, you can see all those little V shapes just like the chain had, except instead of just working through the top loop, which you can just work through the top loop if you want, that's just going to have a different effect. Normally, when you're working a pattern, you're going to have to go through both loops. You're going to go through and under, so you have both loops on top of your hook, wrap around, pull out through both of them, and you still only end up with the 2 loops on your hook. Wrap around and pull through both. So it's going to be worked exactly the same way as before, except you're going in through 2 loops instead of 1. You can do it just through 1 loop, but unless the pattern says to do that, this is the default option, as far as I'm aware. You can kind of see how this is gonna look as you get more rows. You can see it better, but you can tell by looking, once you learn how to tell, which stitch is used, because they each bring their own unique appearance to a project. And you'll be able to see that more as we get into the other videos showing other kinds of stitches. Now this is the single crochet, which is really good for things that you want to be a little bit tighter, like not as area, I guess. Because as you get into other types of stitches, you can end up with a little bit bigger gaps in between. So part of that depends on your tension too, if you're pulling your string taut or not. It's usually easier to work with if you keep it loose, but it's kind of harder to keep it loose when you're first starting. Now, I've gotten to the end of this row, and I just wanted to point out that when you're looking from straight forward, you can see that there are 2 loops here, but that's not your stitch. You still have to look at it from the top and see these two loops are your stitch still. And you're gonna go above this one right here and into there to get that stitch done. Maybe that's not a problem for you, but I just wanted to make sure there was no confusion. And wrap and pull through. And that is 2 rows completed. I recommend that if you don't count as you're going, you count once you get to the end, just to make sure you have the same number of stitches as you started with, or else your edges are gonna be all wonky. You could end up much bigger or smaller than you started out. And I'd rather know when I get to the end of the row that I didn't do it right, rather than getting a few more rows down the line and then having to undo all of it to fix a mistake like that. So I'm just going to show how I count the stitches. I like to turn it and look to the top so I can see each V shape and count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're good. And that's the end of that video, the basic single crochet. Thank you for watching.